Well, will politics trump economics? At the President's State of the Nation address tonight, governments under pressure to extend the social relief of distress grant of 350 rand and eventually implement it as a basic income grant. It will be a popular move and help ease inequality, but the state is already providing welfare to millions of people and is expected to cost billions of rand. Treasury has vowed to rein in government spending and get the country's finances on a sustainable path again. Well, let's discuss this matter now with Nkululeko Majozi. He's with the Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute. Nkululeko, good afternoon. The basic income grant suddenly becoming a hot topic again, but I mean, it's been mooted for quite a long time, and social organizations and NGOs and many bodies like yourselves are calling for it as a lever or as a way of alleviating poverty. Are you expecting the President to shed some more light about this or not?
Good afternoon, Dan, and thanks for having me. Okay, so our main expectation from tonight's State of the Nation address is that the President will extend the state of the social relief of distress grant, which is known as the COVID 350 grant, by another 12 months. And we also expect him to make mention of a move to introduce a basic income grant on a permanent basis to help South Africans and provide basic income support to South Africans.
So that's still a way to come, but the pressure is growing, though, for such a basic income grant to come. But some people are saying the country cannot afford it.
Well, of course, there's great contestation around the basic income grant, but the argument that the state cannot afford a BIG is a false argument, and it's a myth. It's not based on any research evidence. We have conducted research at SPI, which has looked at a number of ways in which a basic income grant could be funded by the state, which includes borrowing, but borrowing is one of many options that are there. I mean, we have excessive foreign national reserves that could be used. The PIC also has about 2 trillion rands worth of assets that could be freed up and brought into the economy to fund the BIG. And I mean, there's also other tax measures that could be introduced. But to argue that it is not affordable at the moment is a complete myth.
Yeah, just the extension alone of the current COVID-19 350 distress grant, let's just call it that just for simplicity, is set to cost another 35 billion rand to the fiscus. There are a number of other types of grants. In your view, should the BIG be an aggregation, a combination of all these grants, and be giving as a monthly to those poor households ongoing along the levels of that threshold of the poverty line?
Well, I mean, we already have other grants, as you mentioned. But yes, in an ideal world, the BIG could replace all the other grants and be made a universal grant, which would be a much more cost-effective way of implementing the grant. So by removing those means tests of and targeting of the grant, you just give it to all South Africans, and those who do not really need the grant, we can recoup that through the tax system. So because we all know that means testing and targeting can be a very expensive administration process. So the best way, of course, eventually would be to implement the BIG as a national and universal grant that all South Africans can qualify for. And for those who really do not need the BIG, then we can use the tax system to recoup it from them.
Yeah. Now, in your research as the Poverty and Inequality Institute, what are you finding are the benefits here? Because when I speak to some economists, they say even the 350 rand, it may be little to some people, but it does benefit poor households. And if you then raised it or extended it rather, or then implemented in the near future a type of a BIG, you'll be really helping even the economy itself to start moving in the right growth direction.
Yes, that is absolutely true. We have conducted research looking at global pilots on the BIG that have been implemented across many countries across the world. And there are clear benefits in terms of giving cash to people to be able to spend on the things that they deem necessary for themselves to survive on a daily and on a monthly basis. I mean, you find people using this money to generate extra income for themselves by setting up small businesses for themselves. You also find that the BIG also helps in terms of getting that gender equity within the household, whereby women are able to be empowered by having that basic income, and they do not have to resort to such things as transactional sex to be able to survive. So there are many advantages to a BIG, and which could also serve as a stimulus effect to the economy, which would need also to be locked in with other labor market and also infrastructure projects for that stimulus effect to really take shape within the economy.
Yeah, well, the grant, whether it's the distress grant, plus the others that exist, whether in the near future it is the BIG, helps, as you said, with the daily needs and getting some consumption level and spending, that sort of, I mean, our GDP, the biggest percentage of our GDP in the country is largely consumption driven. But from an inequality perspective, Nkululeko, we are told our country is the most, or one of the most unequal societies in the world. When you listen to Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa tonight delivering his State of the Nation address as the President of the Republic in the inequality space, what would give you a sense that we're moving in the right direction to address issues around inequality?
Well, then the first realization that we need to make is that the issue of poverty is closely associated with income inequality in our country. So, and another thing that we need to realize is that post-democracy, the most effective and the most successful measure in which government has fought poverty and inequality in this country is through social security services, providing free housing, providing free health, providing free basic education, and also the introduction of social assistance grants. And the success of social security trumps any other business-friendly strategy that the government has tried to implement over the last 28 years or so. It also trumps the EPW labor market initiatives that the government has tried to introduce, and also the business and investor-friendly economic policies that we've had in the last 2 decades or so. So for us, making that commitment towards the extension of the social relief of distress grant, and then making means to introduce a basic income grant within the next year will be a success in terms of trying to fight inequality in this country.
Yeah, and we've heard this 46% unemployment rate of people, of all groups of people, and then when it comes to the youth, and the number is shocking, I mean, young South Africans. And finally, Nkululeko, as a young South African, at the end of tonight, at the end of the State of the Nation address, what would put a smile on your face among many things you've explained, besides the income grant thing, besides what you've just said, but what else would make you then say, yeah, nah, I think the president has hit the nail on the head and we're going to be okay eventually over the next short to medium term?
For me, it's hard to say, Dan. It's hard to say. A lot of promises are made, but...
Oh, by the way, sorry, Nkululeko, the politicians are now calling them commitments, not promises, which baffles the mind. Anyway, sorry to cut there. Whatever you call it, for me, just do the job, just deliver. Sorry, Nkululeko, you were saying it's very hard to say.
Yeah, and that's basically it. Whether you call it commitments, whether you call it promises, but those commitments, the government has failed time and again to meet those commitments. I mean, just last year, in last year's SONA, one of the things the priorities that the president outlined, which was the second priority, was to accelerate economic recovery and to implement reforms to create sustainable jobs. But within that same year, unemployment increased to record levels. So there is a culture of promising or of committing, but there isn't a culture of delivery. So what will make me happy is not commitments or promises, but getting to that culture of delivery.
Thank you very much for your views and insights and your time as well. Nkululeko Majozi, he's of course with the studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute. As we build to tonight,